Let's talk about the valuation of a company. Now, this is really goes to the core of the stock market because stocks are priced at a certain value. And how did they get to that value? Why do they think that stock is worth $20 or $40? How did they arrive at that number? This is obviously very key because then it gives the investor an idea of whether the stock is undervalued or overvalued. There's no such thing as a true value because true value is in the eye of the beholder, and therefore it becomes a subjective matter. It becomes a consensus amongst various professionals as to what the true value is. And then the market has a way of determining the true value, at least as of that day, because ultimately everything is based on supply and demand. If there's demand for a stock, the value is going to go up. If there's no demand and if there's a lot of supply, if people want to sell, then the value is going to go down. So ultimately everything depends on supply and demand. But the reason stocks move on a daily basis is because the concept of true value of a stock is a subjective matter. However, in finance classes, you will see two or three key ways of valuing a company, and none of them are perfect, but they are the best we have because valuation of a company is a subjective matter and nothing can change that. If you're a long-term investor, you're going to be looking at fundamental analysis. So, which means the company's financials, what is their projection over the next 3 years, how much is their earnings per share, because they'll have $200 million in earnings. And if they have 100 million shares, then the earnings per share is $2. And so those are the kinds of metrics that they would look at. What they want to do, generally, the discounted cash flow method projects the company's earnings, investments, growth areas, and all of that over the next, say, 5 years. And so the company projects this, analysts go through it and verify it and ask questions, make changes, suggest changes. Once they do a 5-year cash flow projection, 5-year earnings projection, then they discount it to the current day. So they use discounting percentages. And how they use discounting percentages are all much more deeper concepts if you do a class on finance. But for our purposes here, they project it over 5 years. Then they bring that number down to a current day projection. And then they arrive at the values. Your cash flow today over the next 5 years, discounted to today, is going to be so much. If that is your earnings, total earnings, and then they'll divide it by the number of shares and get an earnings per share. And so valuation is a tricky thing. There is also another method to value, which is the earnings multiple. So if you can see, the earnings multiple works if you're sort of in the same industry, same peer group. So, for example, let's say Nike and Reebok. I'm just taking some examples. It could be Coke and Pepsi, Nike and Reebok. If Nike is already being valued by professionals at an earnings multiple of 10, then it's likely that Reebok will be somewhere there. It obviously won't be exact. And then what they'll do is they'll look at the competitive advantage of both companies. They'll look at the growth rate of both companies, and they'll adjust Nike's earnings multiple so that it fits Reebok's. So basically, these are the two popular methods for fundamental analysis. Both of them work in different situations. If you have a huge operation where you have factories and sales offices and global operations, you're probably going to do the discounted cash flow method. And if you have a simple business, perhaps an internet-based model, then you can go by the earnings multiple method. But ultimately, stocks move on a daily basis because of supply and demand. There are some set of investors who think the stock should go up, and there are others that think that the stock should go down. And so there's always this battle going on in the markets. True value is never accurate. It is always a subjective matter. But whenever new information comes about the company, whether it's about earnings potential, whether it's about lawsuits or liabilities, all that will have an immediate impact on the stock. So remember always, so whenever you have any fundamental events are things like, suddenly a lawsuit on your company, or there's a merger and acquisition going on with that company. These are all fundamental events, and they will change the valuation completely because new information has come into the market and the stock is going to react pretty much on an immediate basis. The stock always represents all known information at that particular point in time.